Yeah, you, okay. Yeah, I'm Rod Miller. As some of you know, used to be a member of the Lakeside Club. I left for North Carolina in 2013. No, 2003. And I worked there 13 years and finally retired back to North Ogden, Utah 4 years ago. One of the things that most of you might have known about me, I collected a little petrified wood earlier. I still collect some, but a few years ago we started collecting Wyoming Jade, and that's become our focus now. And we'll go ahead and start. I do most of the collecting, but Marjorie does all the approving. So let's see, how can I push the continue button?
You just click on the mouse.
You can click on an up or down key,
okay,
or a return key.
Yeah, here we go here. This presentation right now is dedicated to the late Leslie Cook and Robert Tressler, who got us into what we're into. Robert Tressler is my wife Marjorie's uncle, and he introduced me to Les. Les was an electrician that worked in the oil fields wrapping electrical motors. He's single and quite an interesting old guy. He was very, very protective of his jade, and through Marjorie's uncle, developed a trust of us and gave us access to a lot of nice material. There was Les and Robert. Les took us up to a claim that was run by Hap Van Drossack a long, long time ago. Both of these gentlemen have passed since. They passed about 20 years ago. Then Les, he sold me this piece, I guess. And about 3 or 4 years after he sold it to us, he kind of says, geez, I sure like to have a piece of jade back that I gave you, sold you. And I asked which one, and he wouldn't tell me. So. But he's a really an interesting guy. And I think most of you probably know jade comes in the form of jadeite and nephrite. Physically, they kind of look the same, but chemically they are different. Jadeite is a silicate of sodium and aluminum. It's a little harder than nephrite, and it's a little heavier than nephrite. And it has kind of a crystalline structure. And to me, I haven't worked much jadeite, but it's a little easier to work and polish than nephrite. The nephrite is a silicate of calcium and magnesium, just a touch softer and a touch less specific gravity. And its physical structure is made up of fibrous elements, fibers of tremolite and actinolite. Almost all, as far as I know, all Wyoming jade is nephrite jade. And all of that nephrite jade is basically a mixture of tremolite and actinolite. The darker greens will tend to have a little more iron, actinolite, and the lighter jade will have a little more magnesium-rich tremolite. And as I kind of indicated just a bit ago, while not particularly hard, nephrite is very, very tough due to the interweaving of the crystal-like or fiber-like crystals. And it's called felting. You get a real tight felting is better because it polishes better and it's a little more translucent and it holds together. This toughness has allowed float jade to survive a lot of erosive environmental conditions. And percentage-wise, float jade tends to be a little better quality material than load material. When found in the field as float, it'll often have a reddish brown rind, and the core will tend to have a little better quality jade than the outside. Field chipping, which is actually quite difficult, is really not a reliable way to check the quality of the jade, because most of it, as I said earlier, the higher quality tends to be a little more internal towards the center. And from my standpoint, I think it decreases the value of what we collect, because usually we'll collect a nice wind slick, which I'll talk about a little later. And if you put a chip in it, that affects its quality for me. And I bought a little collection from a guy, 15 years ago. He needed some quick money, and he sold his grandpa's jade to me. And every single piece had a chip taken out of it. And while it remained a good buy, it just was a little annoying to see such a beautiful, some of them are really, really nice slicks, and they were decreased in value because he chipped them. Field identification of jade. It tends to be heavier than other rocks. Specific gravity is a little higher. You cannot scratch it with a knife. The surface is kind of smooth and waxy. And if you break an end of it and it glitters, then it's probably not jade if it glitters. A little bit of the very brief history is lapidary in Portland was said to have cut apple green jade cowboys in Wyoming around 1908 to 1909. But most people will cite Lloyd Curtis and Bill Marion as finding jade in 1936, Township 30 by Split Rock, near the Sweetwater agate beds. And then the so-called rediscovery of jade occurred about in 1956, centered around Bull Canyon, kind of as the rock hobby started to take off and really grow post-World War II. These are just some names. They really don't mean a lot other than if you look at a piece of jade and the person can tell you it comes from one of these, it attaches a little more provenance to it. And occasionally, just occasionally, you can ID the location of where that might have come from based on its appearance. Where do you find jade? It's a pretty good sized area, but mostly in the center of the state along Highway 287 from Lander to Casper. And there are a few other parts, but not too many. You can spend a little bit of time looking at this on your screen. Basically, if you can find Jeffrey City and walk in the fields above and the mountains above and below, north and south, your chances of finding jade will be increased more than if you hunted around Yellowstone or the Tetons or the Eden Valley area. Generally, the most desirable colors of jade will be apple green and black. A lot of people will say Edward's black, but some of the other blacks are certainly just as good. And then just don't, whatever you do, don't ignore the other colors if you see a nice quality piece of jade. Bull Canyon has become a favorite of a lot of collectors, and it's called a pattern jade. It'll usually have 2 or 3 different colors, and it'll form patterns of color. And it's fairly highly sought after. A lot of the Wyoming jades will be blue, gray, olive is very, very common. Then there's a thing called honey olive, which is a little later. If you can imagine honey being superimposed on an olive color. Snowflake Jade is green with speckled with white. And then as we came out here and started looking more on Facebook at some people, some of the Snowflake Jades are calling flower jade. Pink and green jade is sometimes called cherry blossom jade. And when I say pink and green jade, the pink part is usually thulite. And then there's a very rare coffee colored jade. Then in our personal collection, we collect a lot of different types of jade, but usually we like to collect slicks, which are water and wind smooth and shiny, not really shiny, but very smooth and aesthetically pleasing. We'll also look at jade in slices if they have a special feature to them. When we started out, I cut a lot of different cabs, and what's really fun about it is it's so tough and resistant to chipping that you can cut some really intricate points and they won't break or chip. Well, they'll tend not to. You could if you really wanted to, but generally they're very resistant to any kind of breaking. And this is fairly representative of the different types of jade you find. You have nice apple green here. You have a black from Jeffrey City area up here. You can see my pointer, is that right? And then here are some kind of pseudomorphs of quartz that occurs in this one. Then you have a blending of a gray and a light green olive. So there's quite a nice variety of jades, but people tend to go towards the black and the apple greens. I've kind of fallen in love with some of the Bull Canyon because they're just tremendously interesting. A lot of them will have black borders, different shades of green, and a few of them will have dendritic inclusions in them. This is a very, very nice Bull Canyon jade, and you can see the black pattern on the outside. And then if you look closely, I haven't had anybody been able to tell me what this is all about, but I think it's a real complex pseudomorph replacement of probable quartz. Just a fascinating sample of Bull Canyon pattern jade. And this is another probably more common type of Bull Canyon jade that you'll see. The left one is not terribly attractive, but when you backlight it, it becomes, to me, a lot more appealing. And this kind of goes along with maybe the center, the core of the jade is generally higher quality than the outside. But it's a nice Bull Canyon with a black outside. Pretty good olive here, but then a beautiful blue-green, high-quality jade in the middle, the core. Here's one that we're going to call Game Warden Jade. And I just I showed that on Facebook this year and got some feedback on it. That people there thought it's kind of a blue-green, and it's very uncommon and named after a jade game warden over there. And this part up here is real nice quality jade, but it'll have these lines through it that for some people will decrease the interest or value in it as far as cutting. Here's a very intriguing piece of jade from Beaver Rim. And a few years ago, when we still lived in West Richland, I sent a picture of it to one of the jade experts in California, and he had never seen anything like that before, this pattern. No special pattern to it, but I call it my Harlequin piece. This is a pretty decent block of apple green. It's, I think it weighs 11 pounds, and it's just fracture-free, just gorgeous. There's a little apple green slick, and you can start to see what I like as slicks is all real smooth, unpolished, unaltered or ground on at all. That's found in nature, water worn and sandblasted. And this is a real classic appearance of Edwards black. The Edwards black claim, the Edwards claim produced just an incredible black jade. And theoretically, you shouldn't be able to, you put a bright light to the edge of it and you shouldn't see any green. Some of the people on Facebook who are, they're pretty well-known collectors and sellers. They'll allow a teeny bit of green to show through and still call it black, but I tend to be a little harder on that. And if you can see any hint of green, then you shouldn't call it black. But it'll have the classic red rind, and that's black, black. And there's kind of, it's a small piece, but it's one of my favorites, polished up beautifully. And you can see the edge of the nice red rind on it. And that's pretty much, you see those, the pure black and the red rind, and you feel pretty comfortable that it's an Edwards, piece of Edwards black. And here's it's not really too pretty, but there's another deceased shop owner, Bob Tracy in Laramie, Wyoming, sold me this piece. And he never did me wrong when he was selling me material. I've always liked it and trusted him in his opinion. He says, and I haven't seen another one like it either, so it must be fairly rare. And you'll see people call this purple jade, but it's not. It's too late. And now we'll just pretty much go into things that we collect. I like quartz crystals and jade. And Wyoming is somewhat unique in the fact that it has crystals within the jade. A lot of other locations, as far as I know, do not have that. I have one piece that has garnet. And then we really, really like pseudomorph formation after quartz in our jades. And this is a pretty straightforward quartz crystals in the middle of jade. Yeah, it would probably not turn you on to buy a piece like this if you're going to make cabochons out of it. But for a specimen, it's a pretty nice representative piece. Here's a perfectly black piece of jade from the Jeffrey City area with quartz crystals, rotten quartz crystals in it. And I don't understand some of this at all, the physical chemical reactions that are going on here. Did this just never form a good quartz crystal? Or was there a quartz crystal there and now it's somehow degenerating? I do not know. Here's maybe one step further. This is a nice, beautiful, high quality jade slice. And there you have a different type of jade. That's jade, just like here, it's just a different color. And it's a pseudomorph after quartz. How that happens, I don't have a clue. And here's a piece that's about 8 inches tall and 10 inches wide with just gorgeous quartz crystal pseudomorphing going on. Some people might want to make a cabochon out of that, but I never would. This is my best sample of a beautiful Wyoming jade with quartz crystal pseudomorphing. This is a pretty cool one. Chris, some lady named Chris really liked this. It's just a beautiful sage green with a pseudomorphing after quartz. Like a lot of people might not collect that, but it'll make a pretty nice cabochon, to tell you the truth. But I collect it mainly for the specimen quality. Here's a very, very, very interesting one. It's only the second pseudomorph after quartz that's standing free like this that I have. And they're only the second one I've seen. I'm sure there are others out there. But the pseudomorph, that's all black jade, solid jade, no quartz in it. Fantastic piece. And this is one I got off of, I think it was eBay, and it came out of a geology professor's collection from the University of Wyoming. And it's a lighter olive, but it's a solid jade pseudomorph after quartz. There's my garnet in jade. And I polished it a little here, so I'm convinced it's jade. And I also bought it from a dealer in Casper that his dad was a jade miner, and John Schnook was his name. And John is a very, very reliable source of jade if you're looking for some. You might catch on as we go along. Everything is my favorite. So, but frog skinning is really cool. Then it refers to a Wyoming jade is commonly bicolored, one color predominating, the other one in spots throughout it or on top of it. And it's pretty much accepted as a result of the seemingly impossible replacement of quartz crystals by another color of jade. So it's similar to the pseudomorphing, but a little different. And in my limited experience with it is whenever I polish a sliced piece of this, the jade that is the round spot in the mother background seems to be a little harder. It will polish a little easier and a little brighter. It's one of my favorites. It's about 2 inches across. And Roger Merck from California, the expert I was talking about earlier, he'd never seen one like this. And every time I show it on Facebook, it's like, holy cow, how did that happen? Beautiful. Found this in a shop in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Just beautiful black with the frog skin effect. And I think it's another pseudomorphing phenomenon. It's hard to believe, but I think it is. This is about an 8-pound piece, actually. 4 inches by 6 inches by about 4 or 5 inches deep, uncut, beautiful, slick. Got this from Bob Tracy in Laramie, Wyoming. This is his shop. He had another one about 4 times bigger that he teased me with, and I made an offer, and he said he'd sell it to me once. I made an offer. He said, God, that's a good one, but I can't let it go. So I dream someday that I'll find it somewhere. That was his shark fin. And this is, you can't really tell it, but is shaped and curves somewhat like a dorsal fin of a shark. I got this a long time ago from Rose's Rock Shop in Casper, and it's a classic cut surface of frog skin jade. And here you can start to see and imagine that there's a quartz crystal here and some change happening around it. Quartz crystals here and change happening around it. So somehow I think there's something in progress. There was in progress at one time. These are some more from pieces of jade from John Schnook. They come from the, I had it in my mind, Glendo area, I believe. And his dad mined a seam of this. Just fascinating material. You can see all the quartz crystal shapes. There's quartz right in the middle of that one. Quartz there, all these quartz crystals. So there's a relationship there. How it began and how it's ending, I don't know. This one up here is just a tremendous feature. Frog skin jade. Fairly collectible and actually makes some pretty nice cabochons as well. Cinder Jade's sought after. This is the last piece that Marjorie's uncle collected. The next one is a little better image of a cinder jade. If you can imagine a piece of cinder that's been a little smooth and wind worn, that's it. That piece is probably 8 pounds and 6 inches by 4 inches by 5. Highly sought after. And here, this has the Liberty Rock Shop. There used to be a Liberty Rock Shop up in Yakima. And they had a going out of business sale. And I bought this big chunk of pink and green jade, fracture free. This is about 6 inches in diameter, the largest one, and the smallest one's about 2. And Richard Richardson, I think most of you know Richard, he did these 4, and then I did these 4. Just really pretty nice material. Got this from Les Cook over in Mills, Casper area. And it's about 8 inches across, 2 inches thick, and 4 or 5 inches up and down. And these pots are where quartz crystals used to be. And this is a never to cut piece. You actually see some quartz in here. But it's a beautiful slick that'll never be cut. This is probably a 10-pound piece, 10 inches from here to here, 5 that way, and 2 inches thick. It's another beautiful wind slick. And then if you want to step away from collecting slicks and other things, novelty items are kind of fun. And what's really kind of fun with this is showing stuff on Facebook. One of the good things about Facebook is you can find some good information. I showed this one day and John Schnook says, "Oh my God, I carved that. I never knew that. I don't know where I got it for sure, but I didn't buy it from John. I didn't know John when I collected it." That's just something I found on eBay. It struck my fancy. Another eBay. Looks like it's probably an Edwards black jade. Belt buckle, 4.5 inches by 2.5. These were some, I can't think of his last name. It's John, somebody has a laser shop in Casper.
It's John Bird.
Yes, that's right, John Bird. And he made his fame with carving on rifles and shotguns and such. But John Schnook took a bunch of jade over to him and he laser carved this piece. And then I have a Wyoming cowboy riding his bucking bronco and another, I think it's an elk. And as I showed this on eBay, John Schnook says, I carved that. I carved that. Oh, and I carved that too. And then Matt Goss, his dad was a famous collector over in Casper area. He says, well, that looks like I'm drawing a blank now. Riggs, a Leighton Riggs piece. And I said, well, who's Leighton Riggs? Oh, Leighton Riggs is a Texas carver that would come to Wyoming every summer. Then all the Wyoming Jade people would gather around on Beaver Rim and spend the summer in Riggsville, carving jade and talking jade. And he was apparently fairly known for carving seahorses. So I think I have pretty good provenance that that's a Leighton Riggs piece. Oh, quality is whatever you want to make it, I guess. This is a very, very high quality piece. You can see how, I think you can see how smooth it is, how clear it is. No cracks, no fractures. And it's just, the color is incredible, the blue-green. And here's another relatively, well, it's a desirable color. It's an olive. It's a very, very common type color over there. But if you look at the backlit piece, that is a very clean, homogeneous piece of jade. And this came off of one of Les's large pieces that he was, I think it weighed 52 pounds before I started cutting it. And he built a special carrying box for it, and he'd go to Mesa, Arizona every winter and overwinter down there and try to sell it. And the first time I saw it, it had a high price on it. I passed. About 2-3 years later, I saw it again, marked down about 10 times. And I kind of said, Les, what's going on here? This is real cheap. And he just smiled. He knew what he was doing. And it turned out to be a fantastic quality piece. It's hard, I wasn't going to talk much about value because it's whatever you want to pay for it. And it shifts and varies. The books you read say only 1% is the highest of quality. Apple green demands a big price, as does Edwards black. A good clean honey olive would be expensive, as a Bull Canyon. And you're probably talking $200 a pound for most of the stuff you would see. But really, really, really good apple green could go up as high as $1,000 or so a pound. And as I said, clarity, real fine grain, tight felting, uniformity of composition, and translucence is what I like. You can have a good jade that isn't translucent, but the black isn't translucent. And then the value is increased with things of uniqueness. Pseudomorphing, frog skinning, Cinder Jade, and Pattern Jade will command a little more money. $50, $30, $40, $50 a pound isn't too uncommon. You get some nicer, cleaner pieces, $100 a pound would be okay. This is a hard one to discuss because I'm not so sure I know everything about it. This one tricked me. It was a piece that came from the grandpa's collection that I bought. It had been chipped, but the outside looks really nice. It's smooth, nicely wind slicked, looks tight and clean. Probably never should have been cut to begin with, but since it was cut, I went ahead and cut it some more. And I've only had 2 or 3, and I haven't totally figured it out that did this to me. But if you see these linear lines through your first crack, you maybe should stop there or make your slices a little wider, a little thicker, because these are about 3/16 of an inch, and it just, I don't know how do you even define that? It just came off in little shards. It just broke, pop, 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 pop. Had that happen in 2 different types.
I have heard those called jade needles. The rock shop in Shoshone was selling them as that.
Interesting. So this is some of the game warden jade, and obviously you can get a nice cab out of there and cab out of there and there, but most people probably wouldn't like that. I keep it as an example. If you really wanted a high quality jade and you really wanted to make cabochons, you probably wouldn't buy that one. This is an interesting adventure. Once we were over visiting Marjorie's uncle, he and Les took us out to the Pathfinder Jade field. And they couldn't stop saying, this junk jade. But boy, it looked nice on the outside. It was nice and wind slicked and actually fairly attractive. And I don't want to garbage it too much because some of the people on Facebook like it. But you can tell that it's not terribly homogeneous. It's not translucent, but it's kind of pretty. It takes a pretty good polish, but most people wouldn't, most jade collectors wouldn't collect it. And there's a piece that never, ever, ever should have been cut, but I bought it already cut because it's cheap. Gorgeous wind slicked appearance on the outside, but the inside is just not very pretty at all. Coming close to the end, this is Les Cook's last piece, and I never could figure out if he wanted his last piece back or his first piece back. Because once I said I'd bring it back to him, he clammed up and didn't go any further. And this is the end of the show. This is probably about an 8-inch across piece, but Les's bumblebee. And he just loved his bumblebee. So I bought it and I like it too. That's it.
Thank you, Rod.
I will try to answer questions. Nothing
If
scientific
people-
though, Jerry.
If people will unmute themselves to ask questions, they may.
Yeah, I have a question. This is Bill. So on Wyoming Jade, there's a fair amount of it that has a white rind. Is that common to an area or common to a type, or is that found all over?
It can be found all over. A lot of it, I think, might be mined jade. Does it have sharper edges than some of it?
Yeah.
I think a lot of that's probably mined. I probably should, my next presentation, I'll put one of those in there. But I think it's mined material, and that's a fractured edge.
Yeah, it's pretty solid and dark, very dark green.
Yeah. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. It's probably a mine chunk.
This is Jerry. Do you ever find any pure white jade?
The green jade, the green gold shop in Laramie, when Bob died, his wife continued on with the business and sold me a piece of white jade that really wasn't white jade. Pure, they say, reading it, pure jade without anything except tremolite and actinolite, with no iron or whatever. It's supposed to be white. I haven't seen any that I'm convinced is jade. I have a piece of a little white cobble from California that's jade, and I believe it's jade. It came from a jade hunter that I trusted. But I haven't seen any that I've been convinced is jade.
I had a couple small pieces, and I think they came from Southeast Asia. And somewhere I've got the darn things. I've been trying to find them. You know how it is. You know, you get 50 boxes of rocks, and you can't find the one you want to find. But it was white. But it was a mottled white.
Mm-hmm.
And I had tested it, and it was nephrite, as I recall. So,
Oh, okay.
one of these days I'll try to find it again. I can send it to you if I find it.
Yeah, no, that'd be interesting. I had a few other things. I don't know. I had other things that I could talk about, but then they got a little scientific, and I didn't. I felt a little encumbered to discuss it. I had some. I bought another big piece from Les. It's about 18 inches by 12 by 3, and it had some little crystal formations in it. And I never thought it was, I didn't pay much for it, so I didn't worry too much about it. But I kept it outside for a long time. And then I finally cut it last year or two. And it had what a guy, I showed it on Facebook, and he said, oh, those look like clinozoisite crystals. And that's a crystal that, when it degenerates, I guess will go into thulite, because it had some thulite clumps in it. And
on Zoom.
And I forget who I sent it to, but he verified it, they're clinozoisite. So that's kind of interesting. So that's, I guess you noticed in this last picture, there are real quartz crystals here. And then the wing of the bumblebee is a pseudomorph of quartz, and there's a pseudomorph over here.
Hey,
That's
Rod,
Yes.
this is Wayne Larson. Is the fibrous jade directional when you cut it? You have to cut across it with it, or how do you cut the fibrous material like that?
I know. You're supposed, I've never been able to determine how to read, necessarily to read the piece to say, cut it this way versus that way. And I haven't noticed a real difference. I have one piece of Bull Canyon that was really quite attractive with backlighting, but when I just couldn't get a decent polish on it. And all I could interpret is that the actinolite and tremolite crystals weren't as well integrated into the piece. And then the interlocking was rougher and coarser. And it never would polish. I showed that to some of the so-called experts on Facebook, and they didn't have an answer for it. They said, you can't get it any better. I will, so I can't help you too much in determining which way to cut it, other than cut it and see if it works for you.
Yeah.
Polishing, most of my polishing is with diamond. And most of what I polish are actually small pieces. This one came polished. And I bought a little handheld car polishing unit that you put 4-inch pads on it. And I've had good luck with that. It's really a wimpy little machine, but you can't, it has to take a lot of pressure, but don't need a lot of pressure. And I polished some slabs with that, and I've been fairly happy. And I'll go to 10,000 on diamond, and then it still has some little lines in it, and then I'll take it to cerium oxide on leather, and it does okay. I just haven't bothered to get 50,000 diamond and see if I could get a better polish than that.
You ever use chrome oxide?
I did, when I first cut jade, I got some chrome oxide and I used it once and it was so messy that
Yeah,
I didn't use it again.
it's really messy, but like when I do the Edwards black, I have a hard felt wheel. I put the chrome oxide on there and it's not real wet, just a little sticky. And you push against the wheel to the point to where you almost melt the dop wax and you just get a super polish.
Okay.
Takes a lot of pressure though.
Yeah, I guess I read somewhere that the Nephrite Jade loves heat.
Yeah.
So if you can generate heat when you're polishing, that's supposed to help. And I think that's somewhat true. I cut a few spheres, and when that baby's getting the polish on it, it's really hot.
Thank you, Rod.
Okay.